Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something pretty crucial in our hyper-connected world: cyber resilience. I mean, with almost 70% of the global population online, digital systems are the backbone of, well, everything we do, really. But what happens when those systems are compromised? That's where cyber resilience comes in. We're diving deep into a 2024 World Economic Forum white paper produced in collaboration with Oxford University. And we're really trying to understand what cyber resilience really means.
Yeah, it's not just about preventing attacks.
Exactly.
It's about thriving in a world where incidents are, well, kind of unavoidable.
Right.
So it's a fascinating shift in thinking. For years, the focus was on building impenetrable fortresses around our data. But as our digital footprint expands, that's becoming increasingly unrealistic.
Right. And so this white paper argues that we need to move beyond just that mindset of simply preventing attacks. Because let's face it, in today's world, that's nearly impossible.
Yeah, that's right. The sheer volume and sophistication of attacks are constantly increasing. You only need to look at recent history to see how the landscape has evolved.
Yeah, the white paper takes us on this journey through the evolution of cybersecurity, starting way back in the 1960s with the very first computer network, ARPANET. I find it fascinating how they highlight these early milestones, like the emergence of the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability as the core principles of information security.
Yeah, and it's a great illustration of how quickly the threat landscape changes. What started with simple viruses like Creeper in 1971, then it escalated to widespread disruption with the Morris worm in 1988. Then came the explosion of the web in the 90s, and that forced us to rethink information security altogether.
Yeah, and each decade brought its own set of challenges. The 2000s saw a shift towards cybersecurity and information assurance, but then massive data breaches like Equifax in 2017 and the Moveit transfer breach in 2023 completely changed the game.
Yeah, those events forced us to realize that breaches are often inevitable. We started to understand that preventing every attack was simply unrealistic. And this is what drove the shift towards the idea of cyber resilience in the 2010s, a concept that continues to gain momentum today.
So let's get to the heart of the matter. What exactly is cyber resilience, according to this white paper?
Well, they define it as an organization's ability to minimize the impact of significant cyber incidents on its primary goals and objectives. It's about bouncing back from those inevitable cyber punches and still achieving your core mission.
Okay, so it's not just about getting your systems back up and running. It's about ensuring that those core functions, those vital operations, remain intact, even in the face of an attack.
Precisely. It's about protecting everything that sustains the organization, from operations and finances to reputation and stakeholder trust. The report even states that 60% of SMEs hit by a cyber attack shut down within 6 months. That's a staggering statistic.
Wow, it really underscores the importance of cyber resilience. It's no longer optional, it's a matter of survival.
Absolutely. And the white paper emphasizes that cyber resilience is a journey, not a destination. It requires a shift in mindset. Organizations need to accept that incidents will happen.
That's a really important point. It's not about if an attack will happen, but when. So how do organizations move from this reactive mindset to a more proactive approach?
Well, the white paper outlines several key steps. It's about anticipating and planning for incidents, designing robust recovery processes, and adopting strong information governance practices. In essence, it's about limiting the potential damage from data breaches and, critically, learning from each incident to strengthen your overall resilience.
It's fascinating how this concept of cyber resilience goes beyond traditional IT. The paper also dives into the importance of operational technology, or OT. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you explain what OT is and why it's relevant in this context?
OT refers to the systems that control physical processes and equipment. Think power grids, manufacturing plants, transportation systems. Essentially, it's the critical infrastructure that keeps our world running.
So we're not just talking about protecting data anymore, it's about protecting the physical world from cyber threats as well.
That's right. And what makes it even more complex is the increasing convergence of IT and OT environments. As these systems become interconnected, they create new vulnerabilities.
I can see where that could lead to some scary scenarios. Imagine a cyber attack causing a power outage or disrupting a critical manufacturing process.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. And to make matters more complicated, many OT systems rely on legacy technology, which is often designed without security in mind.
So you've got these outdated systems controlling essential infrastructure, making them potential targets. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's a serious risk that organizations need to address. The white paper is clear on this. You need a comprehensive strategy that addresses vulnerabilities across both IT and OT environments. We're talking about protecting not just your data, but also your physical operations from cyber threats. It adds a whole new level of complexity to the challenge. Welcome back to our deep dive into cyber resilience. As we delve further into this World Economic Forum white paper, I think you'll find their analysis of different cyber resilience profiles quite interesting.
Yeah, you piqued my curiosity at the end of part one when you mentioned these different profiles. It suggests that organizations can be resilient in very different ways. Can you elaborate on what these profiles represent?
Absolutely. The white paper uses a model to illustrate how an organization's resilience, combined with its specific risk context, creates a unique profile. They outlined four distinct scenarios: low risk and high resilience, high risk and high resilience, low risk and low resilience, and finally, high risk and low resilience.
Okay, I'm a big picture person. Can you give me some real-world examples to illustrate these profiles?
Certainly. Let's start with low risk and high resilience. Imagine a small local bakery with a basic website for online orders. Their risk profile is relatively low because they don't handle sensitive financial data or critical infrastructure. But let's say they've taken some basic cybersecurity measures, strong passwords, regular software updates, a simple backup system. This bakery exemplifies low risk and high resilience. They might experience minor disruptions, but they can bounce back quickly.
That makes sense. So what about high risk and high resilience? I'm thinking about a large multinational corporation with a huge digital presence.
Just exactly. Picture a global financial institution. They handle trillions of dollars in transactions daily. Their risk profile is astronomically high. They're a constant target for sophisticated attacks. However, they've invested heavily in robust cybersecurity, incident response plans, redundancy systems, the works. They've also cultivated a strong culture of cyber resilience, where every employee understands their role in protecting the organization. This financial giant embodies high risk and high resilience. They're under constant attack, but they're well equipped to withstand those attacks and minimize the impact.
Now let's flip the script. What does low risk and low resilience look like? It sounds a bit precarious.
It can be. Think of a small nonprofit that relies on online donations but hasn't prioritized cybersecurity. Maybe they have weak passwords, outdated software, no backup system. A single ransomware attack could cripple their operations, potentially forcing them to shut down.
That's a sobering thought, especially for an organization doing vital work. It really highlights that even organizations with seemingly low risk can face severe consequences if they neglect cyber resilience.
Absolutely. And then we have the most vulnerable profile: high risk and low resilience. Think of a critical infrastructure provider, like a power grid operator, that hasn't made adequate cybersecurity investments. Perhaps they have legacy systems with known vulnerabilities, a lack of skilled personnel, and no comprehensive incident response plan. A successful cyber attack could be catastrophic, leading to widespread power outages and economic disruption.
Those examples are incredibly illuminating. It's clear that cyber resilience isn't one size fits all. Each organization needs to assess its own risk context and build a strategy that aligns with its unique needs.
Precisely. And what's important to remember is that these profiles are not static. Organizations can shift from one to another based on their actions and the evolving threat landscape. It's a continuous journey of assessment, adaptation, and improvement.
Speaking of evolving landscapes, the next section of the white paper delves into the broader global context. I'm curious to hear how global trends impact cyber resilience on a larger scale.
The white paper examines this through 5 key dimensions: geopolitics, technology, society, economics, and the environment. It's a fascinating analysis of how these interconnected forces shape cyber resilience.
Okay, let's start with geopolitics. We've talked about how rising geopolitical tensions can fuel more sophisticated attacks. What other insights does the white paper offer?
It emphasizes that geopolitical tensions are not just driving attacks, they're also leading to the decoupling of the technology supply chain, creating more uncertainty and potential vulnerabilities.
That makes sense. So it's not just about defending against attacks, it's also about ensuring the integrity and resilience of the systems and technologies we depend on, which becomes much harder when global supply chains are fragmenting.
Exactly. And on the technology front, the white paper digs deeper into how emerging technologies are reshaping the cyber resilience landscape. While these technologies offer incredible opportunities for innovation and growth, they also introduce new risks and complexities.
We touched on artificial intelligence earlier. What other technological trends does the white paper highlight?
They point to the increasing complexity of the technological environment. requiring organizations to be nimble and adapt their cyber resilience approaches according to their risk appetite. The paper stresses the need to stay informed about how emerging technologies impact cyber risks and implement appropriate measures to manage those risks.
Staying informed is crucial. But technology moves so fast, I imagine it can be difficult for organizations to keep up, especially those with limited resources.
It's a valid point. The white paper acknowledges that achieving the necessary visibility and insight to manage these evolving risks remains a significant challenge.
Let's move on to the societal dimension. How does the social fabric of our world influence cyber resilience?
The white paper focuses on the alarming rise of misinformation and disinformation, arguing that it poses significant risks to cyber resilience.
We've all seen how these tactics can be used to manipulate public opinion, erode trust, and create social divisions. But how does this specifically connect to cyber resilience?
Misinformation and disinformation campaigns can introduce cyber risks in several ways. They can create new attack vectors. For example, by tricking individuals into clicking on malicious links or revealing sensitive information. They can also compromise system defenses by sowing distrust in legitimate security measures or overwhelming security teams with false alarms.
So it's not just about protecting systems and data, it's about recognizing that cyber resilience is also a social challenge. We need to be aware of how these tactics are used to manipulate and exploit us online and develop strategies to counter them.
Absolutely. And regulations also play a crucial role in shaping the cyber resilience landscape. As cyber threats evolve, so do the regulations designed to protect citizens and assets.
In recent years, we've seen a surge in new cybersecurity regulations, like the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. What does the white paper say about the impact of these regulations?
It acknowledges that regulations can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they raise the bar for cybersecurity, forcing organizations to improve their practices and protect sensitive data. On the other hand, they can add complexity and cost, especially for smaller organizations that might lack the resources to comply.
It sounds like finding that balance between regulation and innovation is key. We need a framework that protects individuals and organizations without stifling economic growth.
You hit the nail on the head. And that leads us directly to the economic dimension, which has a huge impact on an organization's capacity for cyber resilience.
We've already touched on budget constraints and the global skills shortage. What other economic factors does the white paper consider?
It looks at the broader economic context. Economic downturns, market fluctuations, shifts in global trade. All these can impact an organization's cyber risk exposure and its ability to invest in resilience.
So we need to view cyber resilience not just as an IT issue, but as a business issue, one that must be considered within the context of an organization's overall financial health and strategic goals.
Exactly. And the skills shortage is a major factor, fueled by a lack of diversity in STEM education and the slow adaptation of traditional education systems to the rapidly evolving needs of the industry.
It's a problem that's only going to worsen if we don't address it. We need to invest in education and training programs that equip people with the skills they need to thrive in cybersecurity.
I completely agree. The white paper also urges organizations to think outside the box when it comes to attracting and retaining talent, maybe by offering competitive salaries, flexible work arrangements, or professional development opportunities.
It's a reminder that investing in people is just as important as investing in technology when building cyber resilience.
Couldn't agree more. And now we arrive at what might seem like an unlikely factor, the environmental dimension. The white paper makes a compelling case for its inclusion in any discussion of cyber resilience.
I'm intrigued. How does the environment play a role?
The white paper highlights the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, fueled by climate change. These events can severely impact digital infrastructure, causing power outages, disrupting communication networks, and damaging physical assets.
So a natural disaster could trigger a cyber incident or at least worsen existing cyber vulnerabilities?
Precisely. The white paper stresses the need for organizations to incorporate climate risks into their cyber resilience planning. Systems and data need to be protected from extreme weather events.
It's a fascinating connection that I hadn't considered before. It underscores how interconnected our world is and how seemingly unrelated factors can ripple outwards, impacting cyber resilience in unexpected ways.
It's a great reminder that cyber resilience isn't just about protecting ourselves from malicious actors. It's also about building systems that are robust enough to withstand a variety of disruptions, both natural and man-made.
So we've explored these 5 dimensions of the global context: geopolitics, technology, society, economics, and the environment. What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
The white paper makes a strong argument that these forces are not static. They are dynamic, interconnected, and constantly shaping the cyber resilience landscape in complex ways, creating both opportunities and challenges.
So it's not enough to focus on just one or two of these dimensions. Organizations need to consider all of them, adopting a holistic approach to develop a cyber resilience strategy that addresses the full spectrum of risks.
Exactly. Cyber resilience is not a destination. It's an ongoing journey of adaptation and innovation.
It sounds like organizations need to constantly scan the horizon, anticipate changes, and adjust their strategies accordingly.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the final section of the white paper, where they offer some practical guidance on sharing cyber resilience practices from the front lines.
I'm all ears. I'm always interested in hearing what works in practice.
The white paper begins by emphasizing a crucial point that we've been discussing. Cyber resilience starts at the top.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into cyber resilience. We've explored the definitions, the global landscape, and now we're ready for those frontline insights, those practical strategies that can actually help build a more resilient digital world.
This section of the white paper is exciting because it goes beyond theory, and it examines the real-world experiences of organizations successfully implementing cyber resilience strategies. It's like a peek behind the curtain to see what actually works.
Exactly. More than just a theoretical framework. It's about real-world application. And as you mentioned at the end of part 2, the white paper really emphasizes that cyber resilience starts at the top.
That's right. It all comes down to leadership buy-in. Those at the highest levels of the organization need to understand that cyber resilience is a strategic business imperative, not just something for the IT department to handle.
It's about more than just allocating budget and resources. Leaders need to actively cultivate a cyber-resilient mindset, setting the tone for the entire organization. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder than words. Leaders need to demonstrate their commitment through their decisions, their communication, and even the way they respond to incidents. The white paper suggests embedding decision-making on cyber resilience into the organization's existing governance structures.
That makes a lot of sense. Cyber resilience shouldn't be an afterthought or a separate checklist item. It needs to be woven into the fabric of how the organization operates.
Exactly. That means clear accountability for cyber resilience at every level, from the board of directors to individual business units. But it also means empowering those individuals to make decisions that align with their specific needs and risk profiles.
It's a balancing act. Centralized oversight with decentralized execution. And of course, this all has to be built on a foundation of strong cybersecurity practices.
Without a doubt. The white paper emphasizes the need to design business processes and information governance practices with cyber resilience in mind. It's important to recognize that 100% cybersecurity is an unrealistic goal.
It's about creating those layers of redundancy, planning for those what-if scenarios, and building in safeguards that allow an organization to keep functioning, even in a degraded state after an attack.
Precisely. Think regular testing of incident response plans, robust data backup and recovery procedures, and training employees to identify and report potential threats.
It's a culture of preparedness. Everyone understands their role in protecting the organization and knows what to do if something happens.
And while individual organizations are responsible for their own cyber resilience, the white paper stresses the need for collective action to bolster the resilience of the entire ecosystem. We can't do this alone.
This is where collaboration comes into play, sharing information, resources, and best practices to build a more resilient digital world.
Exactly. And the white paper highlights several key areas for collaboration, starting with identifying and mitigating common points of failure. Recognizing those weaknesses that could impact the entire ecosystem is essential.
Yeah, a weakness in one organization can create a ripple effect, impacting others. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected in the digital world.
We are. Sharing threat intelligence, coordinating vulnerability disclosure, and developing joint mitigation strategies can significantly improve the security posture of everyone involved.
And another key area for collaboration is sharing cyber talent and expertise.
Given the skills shortage we've been discussing, this is more important than ever. Organizations need to be creative in finding ways to pool their resources and support each other in developing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. Mentorship programs, cross-training opportunities, and joint recruitment initiatives are just a few examples.
Instead of competing for the same limited pool of talent, it's about working together to expand that pool.
I agree. And the white paper also points to the need for a more collaborative and dynamic approach to supply chain assurance.
Supply chains are notoriously complex, often involving numerous organizations, each with its own cybersecurity practices. How do you ensure every link in that chain is strong enough to withstand a cyber attack?
It's a tough challenge. And the white paper suggests moving away from those traditional static approaches to supply chain security, like lengthy questionnaires and audits. They provide a snapshot in time, but don't account for the constantly evolving nature of cyber risks.
So a shift toward real-time, continuous monitoring is needed, where organizations share information and collaborate to identify and mitigate risks as they emerge.
Exactly. That requires building trust and transparency among supply chain partners, sharing information openly and proactively, and even developing joint incident response plans.
It's acknowledging that a cyber attack on one organization in the supply chain can have cascading effects, disrupting operations and impacting customers throughout the entire ecosystem.
The white paper also underscores the critical role of cooperation with regulators and policymakers in creating supportive regulations that incentivize cyber resilience.
This is where governments come in. We need them to foster a regulatory environment that encourages both collaboration and innovation in cybersecurity.
I agree. It's about finding the sweet spot between regulation and innovation, creating a framework that protects individuals and organizations without stifling economic growth. Think harmonizing regulations across jurisdictions, incentivizing investment in cyber resilience, and promoting the development of industry-led standards and best practices.
It's about creating the right conditions for cyber resilience to flourish. And finally, the white paper calls for a proactive and collaborative approach to disrupting cyber threat actors.
It's not enough to just defend our own systems. We need to work together to dismantle the infrastructure and networks that cybercriminals rely on. That means moving from a defensive posture to a more offensive one.
Take the fight to them, make it harder for them to operate.
Exactly. This requires close collaboration between the private sector, law enforcement, and intelligence communities. Sharing information and resources is crucial to identifying, tracking, and disrupting those who are trying to exploit vulnerabilities in our digital world.
It's a multi-pronged approach, combining prevention, detection, response, and disruption to create a more secure and resilient digital world.
And it's a continuous journey, requiring constant vigilance, adaptation, and collaboration.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From defining the challenge and exploring the global context to uncovering frontline practices, this white paper has been a valuable resource, providing a wealth of insights and practical guidance.
It's been an enlightening exploration, and I hope our listeners feel empowered to think more strategically about their own cyber resilience journeys.
This deep dive has highlighted that cyber resilience is not just about technology. It's about people, processes, and a shared commitment to safeguarding our digital world. It's a journey we need to take together. As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
As our lives become increasingly intertwined with the digital realm, how can we each contribute to building a more cyber-resilient society?
That's an important question for us all to consider. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay resilient.